Hey everyone, Hidden Gem Studios here. This is my creative process in creating caves as backgrounds for my webcomic Dragon Legacy, which you can read in the link description. The cave you see here was done previously, but I'll take you through a new tutorial. So let's get started. So first thing, I opened up the reference image by going to Object Mode, Image and Reference, and found the source of the file. Here I draw a rough outline of what I wanted my cave to look like. I pressed N on the keyboard to bring up the sidebar and it adjusted the rotation to lay it flat on the ground. I pressed S to scale it up to what I wanted. I then went into Object Mode, Add, Mesh and Plane to create the floor of the cave. S to scale, and then X, Y and Z on the keyboard to scale in the direction until it overlapped over the cave. I then clicked on the top right arrow and selected transparency to see the drawing below. Go into edit mode, select the plane, Ctrl and R to cut a loop and bring up the loop cut and slide in the bottom left. I increased the number of cuts that I wanted to about 10 and did so again for the sides. Click on the top middle button to enable proportional editing. This allows greater and smoother control over moving the edges. Click on and drag the vertices to move the edges. I also dragged the mouse button for more control options. I moved the vertices until the plane fit into the floor plan of the cave. For the entrance tunnel, I selected the edges and pressed E to extrude. After that, I went around and fixed up the edges to prepare for making the rocks and ledges inside the cave room. I then went to Object Mode, Add and Cube. This cube would act as a platform rock inside the cave as seen in the drawing. I then drew my attention to the part of the cave where the rock ledges would be placed. I clicked on the eye to hide the drawing below. Go into Edit Mode. Select the edges and go to Transparency. Select E and extrude on the Z axis, which is the blue arrow, to create the start of the wall. I then selected the edges on the floor to start creating the ledges from the ground up. Press E to extrude to create the first ledge. Ctrl and R to edge loop cut in order to connect the ledges together. Press E to extrude inwards to create the first step. E to extrude again to create another ledge. And Ctrl R to create another edge loop. We can now connect the two edges by Shift, selecting the two vertices and pressing F. This joins two vertices together. These two vertices, however, aren't connected, so we select both vertices with Shift and go Ctrl M and select at first. Select all four vertices and select F to fill the space in between. I then used these techniques all around to complete the top ledge, and I finished by joining the final gaps to the wall. I now began my focus on the rock platform. I inserted more edge loops in order to make the faces easier to move. I didn't want the rock to be completely square, so I continued on with the edge loops and moving the edges. Once I got the shape that I wanted, I then shift selected all around the lower half of the rock and selected Alt, Extrude and extrude along normals. This extrudes a mesh outwards in all directions. I extended the rock platform further out until I was happy with my result. So now we are going to extrude the rest of the walls of the cave. I shift selected each of the ledges and E to extrude on the Z axis. And filled in the edge that I missed by selecting all the vertices and selecting F to fill. I move some of the edges inwards to create a jagged look to the cave. I also made sure to fill up the entranceway. As I'm going to apply a subdivision surface to the rock platform, I need to start putting more edge loops around the platform. Now I begin marking around the rock to mark the seams by going Edit Mode, Edge and Mark Seam. This allows me to break up the rock into smaller pieces to apply texture. Now that's done, I go to the Modify panel with the little wrench and choose Displace. This applies it to the object. I go into the Texture panel and choose Stucki. I'm looking for a sort of stylized texture of rock by playing around with the different settings both in the Displace and Texture panels, though I'm not too fussy with it. I apply a subdivision surface modifier to make it smoother. And increase the viewport number. I played around with Displace and texture until I was happy with how my rock looked. I also placed the subdivision surface on top of the Displace to make it even more smoother. Once I was happy, I clicked on the eye to unhide the main cave room. And I began to mark the seams around the bottom of the cave floor, which is also to apply texture. And also did the walls. Here is the texture I unwrapped and painted, which will now be applied to the rock. I will show you later on how to unwrap a mesh for a UV texture. I opened up the file location, which now covers the unwrapped UV texture. Clicking on the Materials button, we can see the texture in the viewport. However, it also needs to be applied in the Materials panel. I clicked on the surface box and changed it to Diffuse. Click on the little yellow button and change it to Image Texture. I then clicked on the Open button and found the file to be applied. We can finally see the texture applied in the viewport. So just a small interlude, as I didn't record in the original video on how to do a part of this following section. This is how to apply vertex groups on different areas of a whole object. So first we cut some edge loops into the floor with about 20 cuts and do the same for the wall. Press B and click drag to select the bottom faces in edit mode. And shift select the remaining squares. Then we go to vertex groups and click on the plus sign to create a new group. Name one of the groups to floor and click assign with the floor still selected. Create another vertex group and call it wall. and follow the similar process on the wall. By selecting and deselecting, we can see the names have now been assigned. Now add two displace modifiers and in vertex group, assign the vertex groups floor and wall. Click on New to assign a new texture. Choose Stooky and play around with the size and turbulence. As you can now see, only the assigned wall is now affected. To have even greater control over the texture, create two edge loops near the corners of the mesh. Now do the same for the floor. Also make sure that the wall is above the floor displace. And play around with the coordinates and direction options, as well as the strength. And that's how you apply textures on an object using vertex groups on different areas of an object. I applied a displace to the walls and floor of the cave, using vertex groups to separate the two. This allowed me to independently control the displace based on the X and Y axis. You can also apply as many displace modifiers as possible to get the results that you want. I continued to play around with the various displace options and textures until I was happy with the results, looking cave-like and rocky, close to what a real cave would look like. Because I wasn't happy with the cave stairs in the corner, I cut them out and started to create new stairs independent of the cave room, which also allowed me to model much more easily. Once that was done, I followed my same creative process for the rock platform, adding more edge loops as I went along. This made the edges sharper when the subdivision is applied, and moving the edges out to create more character to the rocks. Once that was done, I wanted to create some greenery around the rock platform. I created a cube, reduced the scale, and extruded it from the top view. I then shaped the edges and applied the edge loops and scale. Once that was completed, I began the start of the vegetation that would grow in the corner of the cave. I created another cube and extruded and scaled as necessary. As the same as the rock platform and stairs, I added displacement modifiers to create a texture that resembled undergrowth vegetation. Back to the stairs, I began marking the seams to begin to apply texture. Again by shift selecting the edges in edit mode and going Edge, Mark Seam. You can also get rid of the seam by going Clear Seam. Now I'm going to apply some undergrowth around the cave platform using the particle system. I went to Append and chose the file I wanted. I moved the object outside the cave so I could clearly see the object, and placed it into a new collection by going right click, New Collection. I named the collection Undergrowth. And then click and drag the object into the collection. I selected the object where I wanted the undergrowth to go and selected a new particle system, chose hair and reduced the length. I then went to Render as Collection and chose Undergrowth. This replaces the hair with the object chosen. I increased the number and scale. Scaling the object outside also scales the object on the undergrowth. Turning my attention back to the cave steps, I finished off some seams that I missed. I then went into the UV editor and created a new UV texture, just for the steps. I then selected the whole object in edit mode with A and pressed U to unwrap the object. Now we can see all of the object broken up according to the seams. However, there is some overlapping here, as there is a place where I haven't created a seam, and so the UV overlaps with one another. This might be the culprit. Now it's looking a lot better. I'm not too worried about these two little rectangles, as they pretty much sit next to each other. I also repeated the process for the particles on the garden bed in the corner of the cave, playing with the scale and rotation. I'm now going to apply the material texture for the cave steps. Now we can see the applied UV texture. Now moving on to the garden bed. I now want to add some trees and ferns onto the garden bed so it doesn't look so bare. These were created in another file, so I can just append them from another location. I moved them to the side and deleted all these spare ones, which I am currently not using. From here I just began moving and duplicating them with Ctrl D to move the plants to where I wanted them, also rotating them as I went along. If you are interested, these plants are available to purchase on my Ko-fi page, in the description, and on my channel banner link. As I wasn't happy with how long the garden bed was, I worked on cutting and moving back the mesh, filling in the bare hole, and fitting the mesh around the rock texture. Again, I appended more plants from another file, making sure it matched the curvature of the garden bed. These Australian grass trees were made separately, but they're going to be a centrepiece of the cave garden. I appended them in, scaling them to size as necessary, and we'll just speed through the process, scaling and moving them into place as we go. Now we're going to apply a UV texture to the garden bed. I marked the seams around, went to UV editor, and created a new UV map. Then A to fully select the mesh, select U, and then unwrap. This is a pretty easy UV to paint, so I'll go off and paint this on the side. So with everything almost done, I applied the painted texture to the mesh, and also applied a new particle system to the undergrowth. I began to frame the first panel of my comic by going Object Mode, U, Camera, and with the camera already selected, going Set Active Object as Camera. You can create a camera in the scene by going Object Mode, Add, and then Camera. In the camera view, I noticed the walls were too short, so I selected around the top edges of the cave walls and raised them slightly so they were just out of the camera's view. Back to the camera, I clicked on the viewport render button to see a preview of my first panel that I would use for my comic. You can save the image from the camera view by going Render, Render Image in the top left hand corner, and once the render is done, going to Image and then Save As, and then select the location that you want. And with that showing you my creative process is now complete. If you enjoyed watching, like, subscribe, or even buy me a coffee. Also check out my webcomic Dragon Legacy in the link below. Thanks for watching!